Good morning. Good morning. Welcome and welcome back to Bookeemonsters. My name is PK. It is Friday. It's finally Friday. It is August the 9th, and we're here to look at the new releases that are being set into the wild each week. Every day of the week, we look at a different genre. On Monday, we looked at cozy mysteries. On Tuesday, we looked at mysteries and thrillers, more the gritty side of things. Wednesday, we looked at romance. Yesterday, Thursday, we looked at fantasy and science fiction. Today is Freeform Friday, and we look at whatever I want to look at. And we've got some interesting nonfiction, some historical fiction, and maybe some leftovers from Monday or Tuesday. So we shall see. Excuse me. Quick announcements. I don't have any sprints tonight. I don't do them on Friday night. We will have them tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, 3 p.m. Eastern. Those go for 5 hours. I do live reading sprint streaming 3 times a week, every Tuesday and Thursday evening and the Saturday afternoon. Shall we jump in? No. The first few are nonfiction. That sounds interesting to me. First up, All That Glitters, A Story of Friendship, Fraud, and Fine Art by Orlando Whitfield. A dazzling insider's account of the contemporary art world and the stunning rise and fall of the charismatic American art dealer Inigo Philbrick as seen through the eyes of his friend and fellow dealer. In development as a series for HBO. Orlando Whitfield and Inigo Philbrick met in 2006 at London's Goldsmiths University, where they became best friends. By 2007, they had started I&O Fine Art. Orlando would eventually set up his own gallery and watch as Inigo quickly immersed himself in a world of private jets and multi-million-dollar deals for major clients. Inigo seemed brilliant, but underneath the extravagant facade, his complicated financial schemes were unraveling. With debt, lawsuits, and court summonses piling up, Inigo went into a tailspin of lies and subterfuge. At around the same time, Orlando would himself experience a nervous breakdown and leave the art world for good. By 2019, things had spiraled enough out of control for Inigo to flee to the remote island nation of Vanuatu, 300 miles west of Fiji. Within a year, he was arrested by the FBI and extradited to America, where he was sentenced to 7 years in prison for having committed more than $86 million in fraud. All That Glitters is at once a shocking and compulsive story of ambition and downfall, a cautionary tale, and an intimate portrait of friendship and its loss. All that glitters, to complete the quote, is not gold. Good morning, Elena. How you doing? Good morning, Kim. Good to see you. Elena, I am great. Yay, it is Friday morning. Indeed, I agree with you. And good morning to Kim and good morning to Elena. Next up, another nonfiction. Dinosaurs at the Dinner Party, How an Eccentric Group of Victorians Discovered Prehistoric Creatures and Accidentally Upended the World by Edward Dolnick. In the early 1800s, the world was a safe and cozy place, but then a 12-year-old farm boy in Massachusetts stumbled on a row of fossilized three-toed footprints the size of dinner plates, the first dinosaur tracks ever found. Soon in England, Victorians unearthed enormous bones that reached as high as a man's head. No one had ever seen such things. Outside of myths and fairy tales, no one had even imagined that creatures like three-toed giants had once lumbered across the land. And if anyone had somehow conjured up such a scene, they would never have imagined that all those animals could have vanished hundreds of millions of years ago. The thought of sudden arbitrary disappearance from life was unnerving and forced the Victorians to rethink everything they knew about the world. I don't see why, because they were very obsessed with death. Now, in Dinosaurs at the Dinner Party, celebrated storyteller and historian Edward Dolnick leads us through a compelling true adventure as the paleontologists of the first half of the 19th century puzzled their way through the fossil record to create the story of dinosaurs we know today. The tale begins with Mary Anning, a poor, uneducated woman who had a sixth sense for finding fossils buried deep inside cliffs, and moves to a brilliant, eccentric geologist named William Buckland, a kind of Dr. Dolittle, on a mission to eat his way through the entire animal kingdom, so the opposite of Dr. Dolittle, And then on to Richard Owen, the most respected and the most despised scientist of his generation. Entertaining, erudite, and featuring an unconventional cast of characters, Dinosaurs at the Dinner Party tells the story of how the accidental discovery of prehistoric creatures upended humanity's understanding of the world and their place in it, and how a group of paleontologists worked to bring it back into focus again. Another nonfiction, Life as No One Knows It, The Physics of Life's Emergence by Sarah Amari Walker. An intriguing new scientific theory that explains what life is and how it emerges. What is life? This is among the most difficult open problems in science, right up there with the nature of consciousness and the existence of matter. All the definitions we have fall short. None help us understand how life originates or the full range of possibilities of what life on other planets might look like. In Life as No One Knows It, physicist and astrobiologist Sarah Amari Walker argues that solving the origin of life requires radical new thinking and an experimentally testable theory for what life is. This is an urgent issue for efforts to make life from scratch in laboratories here on Earth and missions searching for life on other planets. Walker proposes a new paradigm for understanding what physics encompasses and what we recognize as life. She invites us into a world of maverick scientists working without a map, seeking not just answers, but better ways to formulate the biggest questions we have about the universe. The book culminates with the bold proposal of a new theory for identifying and classifying life, one that applies not just to biological life on Earth, but to any instance of life in the universe. Rigorous, accessible, and vital, this book celebrates the mystery of life and the explanatory power of physics. Kim realized this morning I left my toiletries bag at home. Oh no! Hi, Emily. That dinosaur book sounds interesting. Yeah, there was some interesting nonfiction here. And some true crime. Midnight in Moscow, a memoir from the front lines of Russia's war against the West by John J. Sullivan and General Jim Mattis, who writes the foreword. A memoir of service by the American ambassador who was on the diplomatic front lines when Putin invaded Ukraine. This book is the first behind-the-scenes account of how U.S.-Russia relations hit their nadir and a playbook for our unfolding confrontation. For weeks before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, John J. Sullivan, the U.S. ambassador in Moscow, was warning that it would happen. When troops finally crossed the border, he was woken in the middle of the night with a prearranged code. The signal was even more bracing than the February cold. It meant that Sullivan needed to collect his bodyguards and get to the embassy as soon as possible. The war had begun, and the world would never be the same. In Midnight in Moscow, Sullivan leads readers into the offices of the U.S. Embassy and the halls of the Kremlin during this climactic period, among the most dangerous since World War II. He shows how the Putin regime repeatedly lied about its intentions to invade Ukraine in the weeks leading up to the attack, while also devoting huge numbers of personnel and vast resources to undermining the U.S. diplomatic mission in Russia. And he explains how, when Putin ultimately gave the order to launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, 2022, he proved that Russia was not just at war with its neighbor, it was also at war, in a very real sense, with the United States and with everything that it represents. And while Putin decided how this conflict started, its ending will be shaped by us. With his unique perspective on a pivotal moment in world history, Sullivan shows how our relationship with Russia has deteriorated, where it's headed, and how far we should be prepared to go in standing up to the menace in Moscow. This one sounds very interesting. I wasn't going to include it until I read the description. And Elena says, good morning to Emily. McMillions, the absolutely true story of how an unlikely pair of FBI agents brought down the most supersized fraud in fast food history by James Lee Hernandez and Brian Lazarte. In March of 2001, federal prosecutor Mark Devereaux cold-called Rob Holm, the head of security for McDonald's Corporation. Without explanation, Devereaux asked that Holm and several other McDonald's senior executives plan a visit to the Jacksonville, Florida FBI and tell no one about their intended destination. It wasn't up for discussion. Upon their arrival, Devereaux watched them closely, looking at body language, checking for tells. To him, they were all potential suspects. Once they were seated in an unremarkable conference room sealed away in the hyper-secure FBI building, Devereaux began to lay out a shocking conspiracy, one that ran deep into McDonald's most beloved promotions, the Monopoly game. This is where they began to discover from 1989 to 2001 almost every high-value prize winner was actually illegitimate. But how could this happen and who all was behind it? A rookie FBI agent and a brilliant undercover operation led them to one man who brilliantly crafted a near-infallible nationwide conspiracy for fraud. Expanded from the wildly popular HBO docuseries with major new interviews, McMillions traces this massive crime, the intricate web of lies that bolstered it, and the tireless work of the FBI agents that unraveled it. It is a story littered with tragedy, families torn apart, betrayals, financial ruin, and one suspicious car crash. Yet there are bright spots in the hijinks of the FBI agents and their co-conspirators. Ultimately, it is a story of what happens when the American dream goes very wrong. And another nonfiction. The Bookshop, A History of the American Bookstore by Evan Friss. A spirited defense of this important, odd, and odds-defying American retail category. Bookstores have always been unlike any other kind of store, shaping readers and writers and influencing our tastes, thoughts, and politics. They nurture local communities while creating new ones of their own. Bookshops are powerful spaces, but they are also endangered ones. In the bookshop, we see the stakes, what has been and what might be lost. Evan Friss's history of the bookshop draws on oral histories, archival collections, municipal records, diaries, letters, and interviews with leading booksellers to offer a fascinating look at this institution beloved by so many. The story begins with Benjamin Franklin's first bookstore in Philadelphia and takes us to a range of booksellers, including The Strand, Chicago's Marshall Field and Company, the Gotham Book Mart, specialty stores like Oscar Wilde and Drum and Spear, sidewalk sellers of used books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon Books, and Parnassus. The book should also include books. The bookshop is also a history of the leading figures in American bookselling, often impassioned eccentrics, and a history of how books have been marketed and sold over the course of more than 2 centuries, including, for example, a 3,000-pound elephant who signed books at Marshall Fields in 1944. The Bookshop is a love letter to bookstores, a charming chronicle for anyone who cherishes these sanctuaries of literature, an essential reading to understand how these vital institutions have shaped American life and why we still need them. Indeed. Sorry, copy was required. The Devil Behind the Badge. The Horrifying 12 Days of the Border Patrol Serial Killer by Rick Gervais. This is a true crime. 12 days is all it took. Melissa Ramirez, Claudine Ann Luria, Giselda Hernandez, and Janelle Ortiz were 4 marginalized women striving to make ends meet as sex workers. They looked out for one another, but they would soon share a connection that none of them could have imagined. When Melissa was found dead, the other 3 women were on edge but assumed they were safe. 12 days later, they too were dead, and police had detained an unlikely suspect, Juan David Ortiz, a 10-year veteran of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, where he carried a badge, a service revolver, and was entrusted to protect the community in which he eventually killed. From September 3rd through September 15th, 2018, Ortiz, a husband and doting father to 3 children, lured his victims into his white Dodge truck and drove them to the outskirts of town where he violently executed them, leaving them dead or dying on the sides of dark rural roads. In this fast-paced, electrifying TikTok prize Pulitzer Prize winning USA Today journalist Rick Jervis tells the gripping story of the four murders that shook the small border town of Laredo and the quest to unmask a cold, calculated killer who was hiding in plain sight. The book is also a deeply human portrait of the four lives lost and an attempt to uncover what motivated Ortiz's descent into darkness. Along the way, it raises serious questions about the border crisis, the abuse of law enforcement, and the challenges of a federal agency to police its own ranks. And I apologize, I didn't click on it. This is what it looks like. Ah, real life streaming here. Next up, we're going back into fiction. The Singer Sisters by Sarah Seltzer. In 1996, an alt-rocker Emma Cantor is on tour with her sights trained on a record deal. Emma's got no lack of inspiration for her music, chiefly her mother Judy, a 1960s folk legend, whose confessional songs made her an icon before her mysterious withdrawal from the public eye. Emma is baffled by Judy's coldness and is deeply shaken when she learns a long-kept secret about their family. When Emma uncovers more about her mother's past, she is vaulted to new heights as a performer. But the knowledge she gains also propels her toward a musical betrayal that further fractures her relationship with Judy. Increasingly famous but fragile and isolated, Emma grapples with her mother's legacy and what it means for her own future. With the richness of a beloved folk song, the Singer Sisters moves between 60s folk clubs and 90s music festivals, chronicling the ups and downs of stardom while asking what women artists must sacrifice for success. The Seventh Veil of Salome. Book club pick if you're interested in that kind of thing. And Emily said hi back. This is by Silvia Moreno Garcia. 1950s Hollywood. Every actress wants to play Salome, the star-making role in a big-budget movie about the legendary woman whose story has inspired artists since ancient times. So when the film's mercurial director casts Vera Larios, an unknown Mexican ingenue, in the lead role, she quickly becomes the talk of the town. Vera also becomes an object of envy for Nancy Hartley, a bit player whose career has stalled and who will do anything to win the fame she believes she richly deserves. Two actresses, both determined to make it to the top in Golden Age Hollywood, a city overflowing with gossip, scandal, and intrigue, make for a sizzling combination. But this is a tale of three women, for it is also the story of the Princess Salome herself, consumed with desire for the fiery prophet who foretells the doom of her stepfather Herod, a woman torn between the decree of duty and the yearning of her heart. Before the curtain comes down, there will be tears and tragedy aplenty in this sexy Technicolor saga. That sounds kind of fun. The Revenge Club by Kathy Lette. Who knows? Lots of booktubers are looking forward to the Seventh Veil of Salome. And I think it was in one of like the Illumicrate or one of those book club boxes for the month. Matilda, Jo, Penny, and Cressy are all women at the top of their game. So imagine their surprise when they start to be, personally overlooked and professionally pushed aside by less qualified men. Only they're not going down without a fight. Society might think that the women have passed their amuse-by dates, but the Revenge Club have other plans. After all, why go to bed angry when you could stay up and plot diabolical retribution? Let the games begin. The Paris Cooking School by Sophie Beaumont. There's nothing quite so romantic or inspiring as Paris in the spring, and what better place for a woman to reinvent herself and start over. Life doesn't always serve up the perfect dish, but second chances are always on the menu. Kate is bruised from a heartbreaking betrayal. artistic Gabby is struggling to overcome a crippling creative block. Learning how to make culinary magic at the celebrated Paris Cooking School is the perfect antidote. Taking the first flight out of Australia, both women find themselves in the city of lights and love. But for Sylvie, the school's owner, things are not looking so promising. She is under siege from a harassment campaign that threatens to destroy everything she has worked for while also juggling a commitment-shy lover, Claude. Each woman will be transformed by what unfolds that spring, and the course of their lives will be changed forever. A delicious novel about love, hope, and the consolations of the perfect strawberry tart. The Last Light Over Oslo by Alex Rickloff. That's a pretty cover. You said I agree. Yes. Cleo Jaffray was an American. Oh, war in Europe had nothing to do with her. She told herself that right up until the man she loved went missing in Poland, and Cleo was forced to turn to the only person who might be able to help, her Aunt Daisy, the U.S. minister to Norway. Daisy Harriman has never shied away from a challenge, be it canvassing for women's suffrage or driving Red Cross ambulances in World War I. So as only the second woman ambassador, she is determined to prove that the naysayers wrong and succeed in her post. When her disgraced niece Cleo lands on her doorstep, penniless and demanding help to find her lost lover, Daisy must balance her responsibilities as a diplomat with her desire to help her family. Their search for answers is interrupted when Germany invades Norway, and the pair find themselves on the run in a countryside that is quickly becoming a battleground. Then, as Daisy is given the task of escorting the Norwegian crown princess and her young children to America, Cleo's lover resurfaces with a story that doesn't add up and dangerous enemies on his trail. This riveting historical novel, based on the astounding life of Daisy Harriman and a real-life royal rescue, vividly captures a desperate time and a fearless heroine. Interesting. Way to bury the lead. In a League of Her Own. This might be all we have time for. By Kaya Alderson. 1930s New York City. An ambitious Harlem woman's husband upends her social climbing when he buys a Negro Leagues baseball team and appoints her as the team's black business manager. Overnight, Effa Manley goes from 125th Street's civil rights champion to an interloper in the boys' club that is professional baseball. Navigating her way through gentlemen's agreement contracts, the very public flirtatious antics of superstar Satchel Paige, and a sports world that would much rather see this woman back in her place at home, Effa ultimately whips her team, the Newark Eagles, into the Negro Leagues champions of 1946. But how long will she get to enjoy the fruits of her success before Major League Baseball tears it all apart? Based on the incredible life of Effa Manley, an unforgettable and inspiring story about a woman with a dream who wound up with a baseball team. I thought that sounded very cool too. The other one we have here is The Antique Store Detective by Claire Chase. I apologize, we don't have time for it. I've got to stop by the grocery store and get the mail before work. Our service manager is also gone again today, so on we go. Kim says going to hop off. Not sure what's up today other than ice cream. Well, that's a good incentive to hop off and get going. I wish I had that as an incentive. Have a good day, Kim. Thank you very much for being here. All right, everybody. Hope you have a very good Friday. Again, I don't have any sprints tonight. I don't do them on Friday nights. We will have them tomorrow at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, 3 p.m. Eastern. We do reading sprints live streaming for 5 hours tomorrow. I do them 3 times a week, Tuesday and Thursday evenings for 2.5 hours, and the Saturday for 5. Next week, we'll look at the new releases being released into the wild next week. Genre by genre. I'm getting my hair done. Oh, fun. Oh, that's also something good to be looking forward to. Elena, bye-bye. See you tomorrow afternoon. You have a good day, Elena. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Read good books. And as the banner says, don't be a bookworm. Be a bookie monster. Nom, nom, nom. Have a good day. God bless.